At a billionaire's funeral, one final letter changed everything. It was not addressed to his family, his lawyers, or his powerful friends. It was addressed to a homeless girl. What happened next uncovered a buried love, a hidden daughter, a stolen legacy, and a truth so powerful it shook an empire. Stay with me, because this story begins with death, but leads to a miracle no one saw coming. Before we dive into this incredible story, do not forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss our powerful, life-changing content. Rain tapped softly against the church windows as Adrian Vale's final letter was opened. He had built towers of glass, moved markets with a whisper, and died with the world calling him untouchable. But the envelope carried one name no one in that room expected: Lena, a homeless girl who once slept near the bakery behind Adrian's first office. Years ago, when his empire was still a dream, she had shared half a sandwich with him on the night he nearly gave up. He had been cold, ashamed, broken. She had been starving, yet her voice was warm. She told him being poor is not the end, being empty in the heart is. Those words followed him through sleepless nights, through boardrooms, through the lonely shine of billions. Beside the lawyer stood Evelyn, the woman who had loved Adrian when grief made him cruel and success made him distant. Her eyes filled with tears as the letter was read. To the girl who fed my soul when I had nothing, I leave the house on the hill and everything inside it. To Evelyn, I leave the truth she deserves. The room went silent. Then Evelyn reached for Lena's shaking hand and whispered, "He spent his whole life trying to find you again." But before the second page was turned, Lena saw a photograph slip from the envelope, and her breath stopped in her chest. It was a picture of her mother standing beside Adrian. Lena's fingers trembled as the photograph slipped into her lap. The edges were worn, the colors had faded, but her mother's face was clear. Young, hopeful, smiling. Beside her stood Adrian, not in a tailored suit, not behind polished wealth, but in a cheap coat with tired eyes and a dream too heavy for one man. Evelyn covered her mouth. The lawyer lowered his gaze. On the back of the photograph in Adrian's handwriting were 6 words that changed the air. "She saved me before I rose." Lena felt the room tilt. Memories returned like winter wind. Her mother had spoken once of a man who promised he would come back when life stopped fighting him. A man who carried hunger in his silence but kindness in his hands. Evelyn unfolded the second page slowly. "If Lena is reading this, then I failed to return in time." Her mother, Marisol, was the first person who believed I was more than a poor man with impossible plans. Lena's eyes burned. Outside, thunder rolled softly, as if the sky itself was listening. Then Evelyn reached deeper into the envelope and found a small brass key taped beneath the final fold. There was also an address, not the hilltop mansion, not any office tower. It was Adrian's first apartment, and written beneath it were the words, "What waits there belongs to Lena alone." The drive across the city felt unreal. Lena sat in silence, the brass key clenched in her palm, while rain slid down the car windows like tears that had waited years to fall. Evelyn drove beside her, steady, gentle, watchful. At the old apartment building, the hallway smelled of dust, old paint, and memory. Room 3B stood at the end, small and forgotten. Lena's hand shook as she turned the key. The door opened with a tired groan. Inside, time had been left untouched. A narrow bed, a wooden desk, a cracked coffee mug, stacks of notebooks tied with string. On the wall hung a calendar from 15 years ago, and beside it, framed with painful care, was another photograph of her mother. This time she was laughing, not surviving, not hiding pain, laughing. Lena stepped closer, her breath uneven, her chest aching with a love she had almost forgotten how to feel. Evelyn found a sealed box on the desk. Across the top in Adrian's hand was written, "For Lena, open only when you are ready to know why your mother disappeared from my life." Lena stared at the words. Then she noticed something else. Under the box was a hospital bracelet. Her mother's name was on it, and beneath the name was the date Lena was born. Lena's knees nearly gave way as the bracelet slipped into her hand. The plastic was yellowed with time, but the ink still held. Marisol Ray's mother, the date was real, the pain was real, her throat tightened. All her life she had believed she was born in a shelter bed, carried through hardship by a mother who never spoke of help, never spoke of love, never spoke of Adrian. Evelyn opened the sealed box carefully. Inside lay letters, medical bills, and one velvet pouch. Lena unfolded the first note. Marisol left because I gave her a choice no woman should ever face. My dream or our peace, I thought success would give me time to repair what pride destroyed. A tear fell onto the page. Another letter in her mother's hand was tucked beneath it. Adrian, I did not leave because you were poor. I left because I was afraid your hunger to conquer the world would one day make you forget the small hands waiting at home. Lena pressed the paper to her chest. Then Evelyn opened the velvet pouch and a ring dropped into her palm. Simple, silver, worn. Inside the band were engraved 3 words for her, for both. Lena looked up shaken. Because beneath the ring was one final document, a birth certificate, and in the space marked father, Adrian Vale's name was written clearly. Lena stared at the name until the letters blurred in her tears. For years, she had carried her life like a question no one wanted to answer. Now the truth stood before her, silent and undeniable. Adrian Vale was not a stranger, he was her father. The room felt smaller, thick with dust, grief, and revelation. Evelyn reached for her, but Lena stepped back, her breath shallow, her heart pounding like a fist on a locked door. On the desk, beneath the birth certificate, lay a leather journal. Its cover was worn smooth, its edges softened by restless hands. Lena opened it slowly. The first page held a date from the year she was born. I saw my daughter today from across the street. Marisol held her close beneath a broken umbrella. I had money in my pocket, but no courage in my soul. Lena covered her mouth. Page after page, Adrian had written of her, her first steps. Her first school, the winter coat he bought anonymously, the scholarship he arranged in secret after her mother died. He had watched, helped, loved from the shadows. Then a folded paper slipped from the back cover. It was recent, his final confession. And across the top he had written, Lena, there is one more truth Evelyn does not know. Evelyn froze as if the air had suddenly turned to ice. Lena looked at her, then back at the page, her hands trembling so hard the paper whispered in the silence. My greatest regret, Adrian had written, was not only losing Marisol. It was allowing fear to shape every love that came after. Evelyn's eyes filled, but she did not speak. Lena kept reading. The company they praised me for building was not mine alone. In the darkest season of my life, Evelyn saved it. She sold the only home her family had left her so I could keep the doors open. I promised I would tell the world. Instead, I let the world call me self-made. A broken sound escaped Evelyn's throat. The rain outside grew heavier, beating against the old window like a sorrow demanding to be heard. Then Lena reached the final lines and her voice nearly failed. There is one more truth Evelyn does not know. The shares I kept hidden for years, the ones worth more than all my houses, were never meant for me to control. Tucked behind the confession was a sealed stock certificate. 2 names were written on it, Evelyn Hart, Lena Ray's Vale, and at the bottom in red ink was a note from Adrian. You were never meant to meet in grief. You were meant to rebuild what I broke. For a long moment, neither woman moved. The stock certificate rested between them like a heartbeat returned from the grave. Evelyn sank into the old chair, her face pale, her fingers pressed against her lips as memories rose like floodwater. She remembered the tiny apartment, the unpaid invoices, the nights Adrian shook with exhaustion while she stood beside him counting coins and courage. Lena looked at her differently now. Not as a stranger from her father's world, but as a woman who had carried part of his unfinished soul. Then Evelyn noticed another line printed beneath the shares. Voting rights transfer only upon reading the enclosed board directive. Her eyes narrowed. Inside the journal's back sleeve was a legal envelope. Lena opened it, a letter from Adrian's attorneys. If this reaches you both, the board has already begun what I feared most. They will try to bury Lena's name, silence Evelyn's claim, and take the company from the people it was meant to serve. Attached was a list of board members, meeting dates, and one handwritten warning. Trust Daniel Mercer last. Evelyn's breath caught. Daniel was Adrian's oldest friend, the man already waiting at the emergency board meeting scheduled for dawn. Dawn came wrapped in cold gray light, and the company tower looked less like a dream than a fortress built to keep truth outside. Lena stood at its entrance in borrowed heels and a coat too thin for the wind. Evelyn stood beside her, calm on the surface, but her clenched jaw betrayed the storm within. Inside, the marble lobby smelled of polish, power, and old ambition. Executives turned to stare. Some recognized Evelyn. Some looked through Lena as if poverty could still be seen beneath clean clothes. At the top floor boardroom, Daniel Mercer rose to greet them. His smile was warm, too warm. His silver tie was perfect, his grief was not. I was wondering when Adrian's ghosts would arrive, he said softly. Evelyn's eyes hardened. Lena held the envelope tighter. When the meeting began, Daniel spoke first, calling Adrian brilliant, calling his death tragic, calling stability the company's highest duty. Then he slid a document across the table, a proposal. Remove all disputed heirs, consolidate control, sell the community housing division Adrian once swore to protect. Lena felt heat rise in her chest. That was when Evelyn stood. Her voice did not shake. He left proof, he left names, and he left a directive none of you expected. Every face turned as Lena placed the sealed board letter on the polished table. Daniel's smile vanished. Because in the reflection of the glass, Lena saw what no one else had noticed. He had already signed the sale papers. Lena lifted the sale papers with steady hands, and the silence in the boardroom turned sharp. Her eyes moved from Daniel to the signatures below. Greed had rushed ahead of grief. Evelyn opened Adrian's final directive and read every word with calm fire. He had transferred controlling power to a trust in Lena and Evelyn's names, binding the company to one purpose: build wealth but never abandon the broken. The room shifted. Board members who had bowed to power now bowed to truth. Daniel tried to speak, but his voice had lost its force. For the first time in her life, Lena did not feel small. She felt chosen. Not by money, not by status, by love that had finally found its courage. Months later, the hilltop mansion became a home for girls in crisis. The old apartment became a learning center. And the company Adrian built funded shelters, schools, and second chances. At the entrance of the new foundation hung a simple frame: being poor is not the end. Being empty in the heart is. Lena touched the words and smiled through tears. Evelyn stood beside her, not as a stranger, but as family shaped by pain, grace, and truth. Adrian's last letter had arrived after death, but it gave life to everything he failed to say in time. And that is the lesson for everyone. Success means little if it only lifts your name. True greatness begins when your blessings become shelter for someone else.